المشاهدين أهلا وسهلا بكم في حلقة جديدة من برنامج قضايا كندية على تلفزيون كنار صوت العرب من كندا. ضيفنا الليلة هو الحاخام اليهودي ديفيد ميفاسير، وهو الناشط في جمعية Independent Jewish Voices الداعمة لحقوق الشعب الفلسطيني، لنحاوره في عدة أمور تتعلق بالحرية والعدالة ومدى تطبيقهما على أرض الواقع حين يتعلق الموضوع بالقضية الفلسطينية. عمل ديفيد كزعيم روحي للمعابد اليهودية في الولايات المتحدة وفانكوفر لأكثر من 20 عام. عاش في فلسطين المحتلة لمدة 4 أعوام. تطوع في الخليل تحديداً وفي مسافر يطا. اعتقله الجيش الإسرائيلي هناك، كما اعتقل في كندا في ماي 2021 بعد تنظيم احتجاج أمام القنصلية الإسرائيلية في تورونتو لإدانة الهجوم الوحشي على غزة. Hello everyone, and thank you for being with us tonight on Canadian Matters, aired on Knar TV, the voice of Canadian Arabs. Our guest today is Rabbi David Mivasair, an active member of Independent Jewish Voices. David served as a spiritual leader of synagogues in US and Vancouver for more than 20 years. He lived in occupied land of Palestine for 4 years in total. He's been actively involved in supporting the Palestinian struggle for freedom and justice. David volunteered in Hebron, specifically in Masafer Yatta, and was arrested there by the Israeli army. He was also arrested in Canada in May 2021 after organizing a protest at the Israeli consulate in Toronto to condemn the brutal attacks on Gaza. Thank you, Rabbi David, for being with us tonight on this episode of Canadian Matters.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Can you please tell us about yourself, more about yourself? Where were you born and where did you grow up?
Well, good question. So I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, in the United States, and I grew up in the same place. And, you ask about me, I'd like to say that my grandfather came from Russia, and he left Russia during a time of terrible oppression and poverty and suffering from wars and from anti-Semitism, and was very fortunate to come to the United States. That's one grandfather. My grandmother was born in the United States. Her parents came from Russia, the same situation, very, very poor, horrible situation. And I think that kind of background gives me some feeling of sympathy for people living in very, very difficult situations of oppression and poverty and so on. And then I have a different grandfather, also, of course, a Jewish grandfather, whose grandfather was born in the United States. So that makes me maybe 5th generation American. And I'm an immigrant to Canada, like most of the people watching the program. So I hope that explains, I hope that answers your question. That's me, that's where I'm from, and the people I came from.
Yeah, you lived in occupied Palestine before. What makes you live there? Where exactly did you live and why did you leave there?
The interesting questions again. So I grew up in America. I told you now about my family history. Mm-hmm. I think my parents' task was to become American, be as American as they could be. Don't stand out. Don't be different. Try to fit into America. And when I was growing up, I thought, wait a minute. I'm Jewish. Mm-hmm. I am different. I'm not like everybody else. And in the 1960s, as I was growing up, American as they could be, I started thinking more and more about being Jewish. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? Where do I belong in the world? It was fortunate that my family could come to America and live there, but is that my place? Do I belong there? Whose country is America? Where do I belong? So I was interested in going to, I can say, Israel. You're saying occupied Palestine. I don't disagree. It is occupied Palestine, but it's also Israel. It's the historic homeland of the Jewish people. So I thought, okay, I'll go there. I'll see it. I'll see. Maybe that's where I belong.
Mhm.
And I felt like, yeah, this is my place in the world. I was 19 years old.
Right.
And as I stayed there longer, I could see more and more, I can say, the consequences for the Palestinians of the way Jewish people were living there.
Mhm.
And I just thought, that's not right. I'll try to change that. I'll be one of those Jewish people who changes it. And I tried, but then I felt like this really, to change it, the best thing I can do is go back to America and be active in the Jewish community in America and now in Canada. You know, it's a very kind of complicated thing. So
Right.
I feel great connection and belonging to that land, to that country, you
Mhm.
know, but I feel like the political situation must change.
Yeah.
And I think for more than 50 years of my life, I've been trying to help, you know, play a small role that I can do as one person.
Um, Rabbi David, 10 years ago, you considered yourself as a progressive Zionist. Now, you're an advocate for Palestinian rights. What was the turning point that made you change your way of thinking or your point of view?
Well, I just saw things getting worse and worse and worse, and I learned more and more. I think the situation is getting worse. I would say the Nakba is simply continuing, literally day by day. So I first went there in 1971, and I could see the situation before my eyes. You asked me, where did I live? So 1 year I lived in Al-Quds,
Mhm.
and I could see what was happening in Isawiya, in Azariya, and even just so many things I could see with my own eyes. Another year I lived in Tabariya, and I could see what was going on there. I could tell you so many stories of what I saw now, like almost, 50 years ago. And it just got worse and worse and worse. It's never gotten better. And I said, I learned more. Not only the situation got worse, but honestly, I was so persuaded by Zionist propaganda. I didn't know anything different,
Mhm.
right? I can tell you what, I saw the movie Exodus,
Yeah.
right? Or I read a book called The Source, or many, 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 many things. Like just, I saw everything from like one point of view. And as the years went by, I started reading different things. One thing that really changed my mind so much is Professor Ilan Pappé's book
Yeah.
called, right, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. I read that book. I was shocked. I don't know, how could I be shocked? I should know that already, but I was shocked. So you asked me what changed me. Also I told you I tried to be active in the Jewish community as a Jewish person, as a rabbi, as a Zionist, to change it and make it better. And after so many years, I started thinking, I can't make it better. What I have to do is like move my energy more to support the Palestinian people in their struggle, rather than trying to think I can reform the state of Israel or change the Jewish community much. I don't, it's like, you asked me what made me change my emphasis. And I think it
Mhm.
was a feeling of failure after so many years. And then more specifically, really just try to align with and support the Palestinian people in their struggles in many ways. I hope that's a good explanation.
Yeah, for sure. Can you please, as a rabbi, explain to us how Judaism defines peace?
Peace. So you probably know the Hebrew word shalom.
Shalom, yes.
Similar to salam.
Salam in Arabic, right?
Yeah. And shalom in Hebrew is related to the word that means whole or complete.
Mm-hmm.
So shalom has to do with completeness. So I can say that peace is when just everyone has what they need. I can say they have enough food, they have a house, they have a place they belong, they have a society that they fit in. Peace and justice are completely connected. In the Bible, there's a commandment to seek peace and pursue it. That's one commandment, seek peace and pursue it. And there's another commandment, justice you shall pursue. Of all the commandments in the Bible, we Jews say we have 613 commandments, keep a Sabbath, eat kosher food, blah, 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 pray so many times a day, blah, 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 613 commandments. There's 2 commandments that use the word seek it and pursue it, not just do it. Right. Look for opportunities, push for it. And those things are peace and justice, and they go together. You can't have peace without justice.
Absolutely.
So the English word peace is related to the Latin word pax. And we talk about in ancient times, Pax Romana, because the Roman Empire was so strong, nobody could fight against it. Or now maybe there was a Pax Americana. Oh, peace in the world, because nobody can fight against the Americans. That is not the Jewish idea of peace. Peace is not everybody's like frozen and they can't do anything because there's an oppressive power, right? Yeah. So actually, I think if we listen to the current Israeli government, Naftali Bennett, he says he wants to achieve peace by basically, giving the Palestinians a few more crumbs so they won't fight so much against Israel. That's not peace.
Of course.
That's not peace. That's oppression. So peace and oppression.
I think peace will be served when justice served first. You can't have peace with someone who you feel that he took something from you. So I believe what should happen first is give back the Palestinians their rights and freedom, and then we can discuss peace, right?
That's the only real peace. Otherwise, it's like a fake peace.
It is a fake peace, yes, of course. Rabbi David, you stood with Muslims during attacks on mosques, supported fundraising for people in need around the world. During the last war in Gaza, you even asked Jews to fast for Gaza. Tell us what influences you to do these things.
Actually, I just said it. Seriously, the Torah tells us that God demands that we seek peace and pursue it. And justice you shall pursue.
Right. So you're supporting...
God doesn't say, you can do that if you want to. You can do it when it's convenient. You can do it if all your friends agree with you and you won't get embarrassed. That's not what God says. God says you have to do that. So in this situation, I know you're mentioning Gaza, something like 80% of the people living in Gaza are refugees and the descendants of refugees. And to say refugees means in 1948, they were driven out of their homes by armed gangs of Jews. They destroyed their homes. They killed people. So 80% of the people in Gaza, they don't belong in Gaza. They belong at home in the rest of Palestine. And since then, they've suffered so much, the blockade, so much suffering. And it's completely, I think, because of what Israel's doing. It's not a natural disaster. It's not a tsunami. It's not a volcano. It's not anything like that. It's because of what Israel's doing. I feel very strong personal, moral responsibility. First of all, to try to stop the oppression. But if I can't do that yet, I have a responsibility to help the people that are suffering. So, and there's so many people, so many people suffering from so many problems all around the world, right? So many countries and so many terrible situations. But as a Jew, I feel like this is my responsibility. I have to do what I can about this one.
Yeah. So did you volunteer anywhere else or just in Palestine, in Hebron?
Well, I live, right now I live in Canada. So I try to help people here in Canada. Yes, I work.
No, I meant outside Canada. Did you volunteer anywhere else or just in Palestine?
No.
Okay.
I didn't go to Tibet, or I didn't go to Myanmar, or I didn't go to the Congo. No, seriously, I do feel like the suffering of people in Palestine is the responsibility of the Jewish people. I can't talk about other people. Other people, we all have responsibility for all people everywhere, but it's a special responsibility for us.
Right. Tell us about May 2021. What happened then? Why did you organize a protest in front of the Israeli consulate in Toronto?
Well, everyone watching this program knows in May 2021, Israel was pushing to steal the homes and land of Palestinians in Al-Quds, living in Sheikh Jarrah, and what Israel did in the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and pushing and making confrontations, And then from Gaza, they fired some rockets, and Israel took that, I think, as an excuse to attack Gaza so severely, so disproportionately. Every day bombing, like for 11 days, people know they killed something like 260 people. We all saw high-rise apartment buildings, office buildings getting smashed. Israel bombed the road in front of the hospitals, so ambulances couldn't go to the hospitals. I felt like I had to do something, and I know there's a consulate of Israel in Toronto going about their business every day, like nothing's happening. People walking in the door, giving their applications for, for visas, business permits. I don't know exactly what they do in a consulate, but just business as usual while people are being killed by the Israeli military. And I thought, no, you can't do that. We who live here need to interrupt that. We need to shut it down. And I thought, of course, the Israeli consulate has so much security. I can't go in there and shut it down. What am I going to do? I can't. But I thought symbolically, we could show that this anonymous office building on a street in Toronto, it's not literal. There's a river of blood flowing out from the door of this building. The blood is flowing down the steps. So we got washable water paint, the same thing a kindergarten teacher uses with the children in kindergarten. If you spill it, you wash it up, right? We got washable red paint. We put the red paint on the steps, spoke to the television. We were in like every TV, newspapers, even Haaretz in Israel, Al Jazeera. It had a big impact. And then I got arrested, and it's worth noting that 2 Toronto police drove from Toronto to my house in Hamilton to arrest me at 11 o'clock at night. And after that, I also want you to know, when I was arrested, dozens of people offered to support me, to give donations for lawyers, to whatever, help me. You know, I didn't need help, actually, because lawyers help for free. Everyone should know. Everyone who's thinking about doing something like that, you need to know there are lawyers who will support you for free. You also need to know the Crown dropped the charges. So I was arrested. 7 months later, they dropped the charges. So there's no legal consequence. The police use the arrest as a way to oppress and suppress legitimate political speech. What we did was legal. It's legal speech.
Mhm.
They dropped the charges. That's their admission that I didn't break the law, right? I could talk about this more, but and we're talking about this right now, February 6, 2022. What's happening in Ottawa right now today? How many people completely disrupting that city for days and days and days? And what are the police doing? So we poured washable red paint on the steps of the Israeli consulate and got arrested.
So
I went back 30 minutes after the protest. It was completely cleaned up, no paint.
wow.
But I got arrested for vandalism.
Right. So
After 30 minutes, there was nothing there.
in your opinion, what was the main reason that made them arrest you, in your own opinion?
Oh, it's completely the influence of Israel and Israel's agents in Canada. It's the influence of, I can say, the Zionist Canadian lobby. Also, the consul, the person who is the consul, you know, that person who represents the Israeli government in Toronto,
right?
They were named in evidence that I and another person gave to the Minister of Justice in Canada, that they are violating Canadian federal law. There's a Canadian federal law called the Foreign Enlistment Act. It is illegal to induce a person in Canada to enlist in a foreign military. So the consul herself was doing that. So we reported her to the Minister of Justice. And then journalists, maybe like you, questioned him about it and pushed him on it. And he said, oh, you know, he's going to get the RCMP to investigate it. Nothing ever happened. But that Israeli consul didn't like that. So we have to do it again. And actually right now there's a petition, a parliamentary e-petition again to the Minister of Justice of Canada, asking them to investigate Israeli violations of Canadian federal law that prohibit inducing persons in Canada to enlist in a foreign military. They're doing it, and it's a case of Israeli impunity. Mm-hmm. Israel can do almost anything, and this government and other governments just let them do anything. So you asked me why. Why did two policemen have to drive from Toronto to Hamilton to arrest me at 11 o'clock at night? Why?
And the fact that they dropped the charges means they don't have anything really physical against you. They just want to scare you. And maybe scare everyone that tries to voice their opinion.
They're not scaring me, but I think they are scaring other people. Even that day at that protest, I'm not criticizing anyone, but I was the only person in the protest who was willing to speak out in public, give my name, put me on the TV, put me in the newspaper. I'll say it. The other people were afraid of being arrested. They went to the protest, but they didn't want to be identified. So the police create this atmosphere of really discouraging people from engaging in that kind of activity. It's not only about Israel and Palestine and Zionism. There's so many things. There's so many things that we have to take care of in this country.
Yeah. So after you release, people try to create a GoFundMe for you to support the fines that you were charged, and you refused to take them, and you asked to donate them to Gazan children. So that's amazing. Like, why did you do so?
Well, there's such a great need. I don't want the focus on me. The focus should be on the people in Gaza or other parts of Palestine. They need the support. They need the help. If somebody wants to give me like $100 or $1,000 to pay a lawyer, it's like, thank you very much. But other people, they don't have enough food. They're cold. They don't have enough clothing. They need medicine. I'm in contact with people in Gaza every day. You just talked to a man from Gaza who's in my house right now. He's a refugee.
Right.
And tonight I was talking with a young woman in Gaza who just gave birth. She contacted me in May. I think she saw me on Facebook and she wrote to me. She doesn't have enough food. And there's so many people with such great need. And I know there's great organizations are helping, Islamic Relief, Medical Aid for Palestinians. There's many, but and we have to support those organizations, but also we can just support individual people. They need it.
Yeah. Do you think, David, that since you are Jewish in the first place and you are white in the second place, does it help you like to get away with something that maybe other Palestinians or other ethnicities won't get away with?
Yes.
That's an honest answer.
Well, actually, more than that, I hope my Jewish voice and my rabbinic voice and my voice of a person who lived there, I've seen it with my own eyes, I've been there, my son was born there. I hope that voice carries a credibility and, people are more open to listening. They shouldn't be more open to listening to me than they are to you. You should have as much credibility as I do. But really, I think I feel like my role more than anything is to talk with other Jewish people.
Yeah.
And when enough of us do that, I think we can tip the balance. I think the tide is changing, if you know what I mean. I think more and more Jewish people, perhaps like me, are questioning and thinking what Israel's doing is not right. My organization, Independent Jewish Voices, commissioned a very legitimate survey of Jewish opinion in Canada by ECOS. They're just a poll organization.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the exact numbers, but something like 30 or 40% of the Jewish Canadians in that poll feel like what Israel's doing is wrong. Right? That's important. So anyway, that's more my emphasis. And I know not long ago, Desmond Cole, do you know the name? He's a black guy, a journalist in Toronto. I don't remember details. He said something like from the river to the sea, and then all these Zionist organizations jumped on him and tried to silence him. The only thing is just don't let them silence you, right? They tried the same thing to me, right? I have been essentially removed from the Jewish communities. When I say the Jewish community, I don't mean Jewish people, right? I'm very accepted by Jewish people. My organization, Independent Jewish Voices, is like 1,000 Jewish people in Canada, but the synagogues and the Jewish federations and these organizations that say that they represent the Jewish people, they speak for the Jewish people, they really try to silence people like me.
You talked about lawyers who are willing to defend whoever is accused of something like yourself for free. How do we reach those people? Like if someone needs them, how do we reach those people?
Honestly, I didn't know that until May.
Okay.
I didn't know, but there's something called the movement. I have to look it up. It's like the move. Seriously, if somebody wants to know, if anyone listening wants to know, they can contact me or they can contact you and I will get that answer. But there's like the Movement Defense Project. There's a network of lawyers based in Toronto that helps people. It's not especially about Palestine. It could be about homelessness or about environmental things, but there's a network of lawyers that are very generous with their time and very effective, and they're good.
Well, it's good to know those people. If you can, please send me the information.
I will do that. Everybody should know it. It should encourage us to be more politically engaged, right?
Yeah. We will add it in a comment on this post later on when you get me the name.
I'll do it.
Great. And thank you. How do you analyze Canada's official position on the Palestinian struggle for freedom and the illegal Israeli occupation, David?
Well, it's interesting you use the word official. So Canada's official position really contradicts Canada's actions. So what I mean is if you go on the website of Foreign Affairs, Global Affairs Canada, you look for Canada's official position. Canada officially considers the occupation, illegal. Did you just say that? Sabrina, I think you just said that. Oh, no, it's illegal. Settlements are illegal. Settlements are an impediment to peace. But Canada has a Canada-Israel free trade agreement that makes no distinction between 48 and 67. Does that make sense to you? Canada has a Canada-Israel free trade agreement where products from the settlements on land that Canada's official position says is illegal and it's stolen, but the products sold from those places are given preferential trade benefits in Canada, just like from Tel Aviv or whatever, right? So when you say the official position, I mean, the official position is just a position.
It's just words, but the actions are totally different.
Right. So Canada, you probably, I mean, you know all this stuff, but in the United Nations, every year there are motions in the United Nations to condemn Israel's conquest of Palestinian land and maybe 15 different resolutions or something in the United Nations every year. Every year, Canada votes with the United States, Israel, Micronesia, and Palau.
Right. To be honest with you, this is the first time I hear the name Micronesia, like from the voting in the UN.
No, you can look it up. So year after year after, so Israel and the United States, Canada, and like tiny countries vote against like 200 other countries.
Yep.
So that's, I'm just saying Canada gives Israel diplomatic cover. Canada gives Israel favorable trade status. Canada engages with Israeli military industries. You might know that Canada's ambassador put on a very nice dinner for all the Canadian youth serving in the Israeli military.
Yeah.
Right. So Canada has an official position, and then Canada's actions are quite different.
Rabbi David, we have the Dr. Jamal Sharif. He sent the name the Movement Defense Committee. Is this what you mean?
Yeah.
Or
Thank you, Jamal Sharif. That's it.
This is the correct one, right?
That's it. Yes. They're very good. And
thank
again,
you, Dr. Jamal. Thank you.
People should know that if they do these things to protect and support the Palestinian rights.
And also Mr. Hisham Kaddoumi, he sent the name Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms.
I don't know.
That's another one, I think.
Well, good. There are more. So don't be afraid. That's my message.
Yeah.
Be strong.
Yeah, it's very good. Thank you.
I want to say one more thing about Canada's official position. So Canada's official position is it supports a two-state solution. Mm-hmm. Canada's official position is, an independent Palestine at peace with an independent Jewish state of Israel. But that itself is very problematic. That's my opinion. You asked me something. What do I think?
In which way?
So I think the idea of a two-state solution is really a delusion. I think it's never been something that's accepted by Israel. I don't think it is a serious possibility. I think it's not possible. And I think much more important than that, Canada should advocate for freedom, equality, justice, democracy for all people living between the river and the sea. There's no reason to divide that land. It's one land. It's one integrated land. And the people
As it used to be one land. A lot of people living on it, Jewish, Christians, Muslims, and they were living peacefully before, but then the Zionist gangs decided they wanted the whole thing for themselves.
So the whole official position of supporting two independent states, it is just a way to covertly support Israel's continued day by day theft of more land, driving out more Palestinians with this cover, kind of a fig leaf of talking about two states. And I'm actually, I'm really disappointed in some of the advocates for Palestine in the Canadian Parliament, and I'm talking about Liberal MPs. They never talk about this. Either they really don't understand, or they just pretend that they think that two states, I don't even want to use that word solution, two states, it's like, it's not real. It's just not real. And meanwhile, people are suffering. Of course, you know this better than I do. There's as many Palestinians living under Israeli control with no democratic rights as there are Jews living in Israel. So the Canadian official policy needs to change.
Right. And we have also Karen, he sent a link, justpeaceadvocates.ca.
Great.
Palestinian legal resources. Thank you, Karen, for that.
That's great. Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't remember these names, but it's great. It's great. You have active participation by the people. It's great.
So you think Canada is part of the problem or part of the solution, and why? Like, we know the answer, but we want to hear your opinion also.
Well, I think Canada is very much part of the problem. Canada, like I said, supports Israel, gives Israel every kind of cover. And Canada people might know that Canada does give aid, foreign aid, to the Palestine Authority, and they might think that's a good thing. Canada gives, I may be wrong, I'm not an expert on these things, but Canada gives something like $30 million a year to the Palestine Authority. Most of that is used for the Palestine Authority legal system and security apparatus. So it's not housing, it's not solar power, it's not medical care, it's not education, it's not so many other things that Palestinian people need. It is supporting the police system that keeps Abbas and his friends in power. True. As really the agents of Israel. The only reason the Palestine Authority was created was to spare Israel from having the trouble of quieting the Palestinians and picking up their garbage and running their school system. So they gave the Palestinians that job. And right now, that's what Abbas and his friends are doing. So when we hear about Canada, giving aid to the Palestine Authority, we have to look at what is that aid being used for? And why is that? And then again, I just wonder the few MPs in the Canadian Parliament who are willing to identify as friends of Palestine, for example, in the Canada-Palestine Parliamentary Friendship Group. I never hear them talk about this. And actually, of course, the Palestine Authority has a representative in Ottawa.
Yep.
And she's not going to challenge these relationships, right? So Canada, while I've said all that, there are a lot of people in Canada who are very, very helpful. I know many people in churches who go to Palestine and directly support Palestinians. There's, okay, I mean, you know what I'm saying. A lot of Canadian people try to be helpful. I think our government is really just like contributing to the problem.
Yeah. So the actual help that Palestinians want is not like to support the regime that help in suppressing them, but they need like projects to solve the unemployment problems. They need electricity. They need to facilitate their life in a better way, medical help, stuff like that. So that's the actual help that might benefit them and maybe give them some dependence. Instead of Israel controlling electricity, they can cut it anytime they want, and they give them electricity anytime they want. They can have some dependent on their own.
There's so many things like that.
Yeah.
But on another level, Canada as a country, as a government, really should look more at the systemic problems and not so much giving aid, but trying to change the underlying structures that make the aid necessary.
Yeah.
So again, that makes me want my government in Canada to push again for equality, freedom, justice, democracy for everyone there. The same way we should want it for everyone everywhere. The same things we want for ourselves in Canada, we should want for the people living in Palestine, Israel. I don't care what you call it. It's the same place, right? But there shouldn't be one group of people ruling over the other group of people. That's
oppressing the other group of people, you mean? Okay, Karen is mentioning something about the complaint he was part of making the CRA, or the Canadian Zionist Cultural Center.
I understand this.
Can you tell us what she means by that?
Yeah, so this is another way that Canada supports Israel. So there are dozens of fundraising organizations in Canada that have charitable status, which means if you give them a donation, you can take the donation off of your taxes, right? And the money goes sometimes to supporting the settlements in Israel or the settlements in Palestine, right? They're actually not in Israel. Nobody says they're in Israel. They're in Palestine. No, but you know what I mean. So some of these organizations that have charitable status directly support the IDF. And that's what Karen just posted. There's an organization called the Canadian Zionist Cultural Association, I think, that has raised millions of dollars and uses the money to provide like services for IDF soldiers that normally the military would provide. So it's a way of relieving the financial burden on the Israeli military for providing those services. But because it's given charitable status, which is illegal, it's wrong.
Yeah.
Because of that, it means that Canadians are subsidizing that. Canada gets less tax revenue because these organizations have charitable status, right? People can donate millions of dollars and take that off their taxes. So all Canadians are supporting and subsidizing these things.
Are they still working? This center is still on?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And another one like that, the biggest one, well, the most famous one is called the Jewish National Fund.
Oh, yeah.
Or the JNF. It was created to buy land for Jewish use. And if you're not Jewish, the land's not for you. And now it directly owns something like 14% of the land within the 1948 boundaries of Israel. And it indirectly controls 80 or 90% of that land. And it's not made available for non-Jewish people to live on, right? And that is given charitable status. So what Karen wrote there, it had CRA, that's the Canada Revenue Agency. Yes. There's a Canada Income Tax Act. It describes very clearly what qualifies as a charitable organization that can get charitable status, right? Of course, we need charities, hospitals, universities, churches, many charities. So it's very clearly violating the tax regulations. We have brought this to the attention of the CRA over and over and over again. And this is impunity. They don't do anything about it. So again, we're living in a political system where we need to increase our effectiveness in advocating for what's really right. You know, I think if we push enough, our system will respond.
Yeah.
So that's what that was about. And actually, I would be happy to give more specific information. If anybody's interested, seriously, they could write to me or, contact you, and, we can get more specific information and help build these campaigns. Yes. Actually, I just there's a great Palestinian physician who lives in Halifax, named Ismail Zaid. He's a man in his 80s now. And he was born and grew up in a village. I don't remember if it was Imwas.
Imwas, yes.
Imwas.
Yeah.
And in June 1967, the Israeli army conquered his village without firing one shot. Within the next 2 or 3 days, bulldozers with JNF logos demolished the entire village. They even killed his uncle who was inside his house. Oh. So Ismail Zaid, he's a Canadian citizen. He's lived in Canada, 50 or 60 years. So he and I and a few other people sent very detailed information that we took from the JNF website and from CRA documents. That's the Canada Revenue Agency. We sent that to the enforcement division of the charities section of the CRA. Exactly this and this and this and this and this. How does this violate Canadian tax law. We told them exactly. Nothing, just nothing.
Do you think, David, that Palestinians, particularly, and the supporters, they are in too much shortage of following these matters legally? Like, are we doing what we're supposed to do, or we
More people,
need
more
more
people
education? Maybe we need more people to tell us what to do and how to do it, because I know a lot of people, they wanted to follow up on these matters, but maybe they don't have the resource, or they don't know where to start.
Well, there are excellent organizations that are working on it, and I just encourage everyone to get involved. You don't have to create something new. Just find out who's doing things that you particularly care about. You have a kind of a feeling like this is the thing that I want to do, and like just get in there and do it with them.
Yeah.
And I don't disparage any approach. I've gone to demonstrations in the street from the Palestinian youth movement in Toronto, chanting in the streets, waving flags. That's really important.
They did a great job. They did a great job lately. Yeah.
Yeah. And then also, you just said legal things like use e-petitions so that a member of parliament can read the issue into the record in parliament. Lobby people. There's, it might sound funny, but I'm a little nervous talking with you, and some of my memory is not so good, but just give me a moment here. I can't remember the name of the group. It's terrible. But
some people ask,
there are groups doing such good work.
Yeah, people are asking sometimes, are these petitions, are they really doing something? They affect their decisions actually in real life, or just?
It's an important question. Also you can say affect it, but to tip the balance and make enough of a change. When is there enough? I think the group I'm trying to think of is called the Coalition of Canadian Palestinian Organizations.
Yeah, the coalition.
You heard of that?
Yes.
The Coalition of Canadian Palestinian Organizations. I started hearing about it in the last year. I'll just say personally, I'm very impressed with them. They meet with MPs. They meet with groups of MPs. I think they're trying to be very pragmatic about what can make change. And clearly in Canada, we have an uphill battle. We're fighting against a very entrenched, very influential group of people. And it's not only like Jewish organizations and Jewish Zionists. We're talking about people like Stephen Harper and a lot of evangelical Christians.
Yeah.
They identify the state of Israel and the Jewish people today with what they read about in the Bible from 2,000 years ago, so they're very influential. And we have our work to do.
Is there any cooperation between associations like Independent Jewish Voices and the Palestinian Coalition? Organizations?
Oh, yes, a lot. And also, I just want to say again, the churches within the larger churches, the United Church of Canada, some Catholic churches, Quakers, Mennonites, there's a lot.
This is great.
We have meetings every month. Also, there are labor unions. There are people who represent CUPE. We do work together, and I think it's a long struggle, and like I said, an uphill struggle, but we can have an impact. Yes. And the more you said to me, should more people be doing more? Of course. And I'd say, don't be hopeless. Don't give up. That's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you give up, of course, you're not going to accomplish anything. Join together with other people and do everything you can. And constantly reevaluate. What are you doing? Is this effective? Is this going to help?
Yeah. We have a question from Hisham Kadumi. Israel is obviously treating Black Jewish people as a second-class citizens, and I saw that with my own eyes. This is obviously apartheid, but why there is no much talking about that? Why do you think the world ignores that?
Why do I think the world ignores it? The world has so many problems. Everybody has so many problems. And within the organized Jewish community in Canada, the United States, and in Israel, there are many Jewish people who advocate for equality for the Black Jews with the rest of the Jews. Most of those people don't think too much about Palestinians. They just want to have a nice Jewish country for the Jewish people, and they want those Black Jews to be treated equally among other Jews. But I'm just saying to Brother Kadumi that I think the rest of the world, there's so many problems in this whole world, you know, and a lot of Jewish people are very aware of that and trying to make it better.
Yep. We still have a lot of work to do, I guess. Like, it's not the Palestinian case is not only for Palestinians. It's for everyone who supports justice and freedom for
Right.
humanity. It's not
Right.
it's not a matter of Palestine only.
Of course. Of course. And hopefully all Palestinians feel that way about every other group that needs their support. You know, we're all in this together. Everyone in the world. We're all connected.
I have a question. I know you said something
Wait,
about.
excuse me. No, I just want, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
Okay.
we are, I assume we're all settlers here in Canada.
Oh yeah.
How did we get to Canada? What happened to the original people who lived right here, like where my house is right now, right? Where are those people? What's happening to them? You know, so all of us have a great responsibility, you know, to do our best for whatever can be done for justice for the original people of this land where we're living, you know. So there's so many struggles in so many ways. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you know, we really have to acknowledge that as well.
Yeah. Can I ask our audience, please don't write long messages. Just make your questions as short as possible because we can't really read it all. Ahmad Inaya, in one poll conducted by Environic Institute in 2018 for survey research, it shows that Canadian Jews have a much stronger connection to Israel than do American Jews. 48% Canadian Jews are very attached, while only 30% of American Jews are very attached to Israel. Any reason for this, although Canadians are more liberal and to the left than Americans?
I have two answers.
Ahmad Inayam.
Brother Ahmad. First, I think that poll by Environics had very bad methodology. They interviewed and polled people who are connected with Jewish institutions, members of synagogues, people that go to Jewish community centers, people who send their children to Jewish schools. They did not do a poll of Jewish people in Canada. It was very selective. So the result of the poll doesn't really honestly represent Jews of Canada. And I would really encourage you to look at the poll that's on the website of Independent Jewish Voices that we did with ECOS that actually gives quite different results. So that's one answer. Second answer, most Canadian Jews are closer to the immigrant experience than American Jews. The American Jewish community in general has been in America longer, farther away from the immigrant roots, and I would say more assimilated. And Jews in Canada are more recent arrivals and have more attachments to Jewish culture. And part of that is an attachment to Israel And again, I really don't trust the numbers of that Environics poll. If you look who commissioned it and how it was done, like look into it. You might come up with some questions about it yourself.
As an anti-Zionist and Jew, you understand, like many of us, that conflating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism is dangerous and a slippery slope. What is your stand on the work of some Canadian representatives, such as Erwin Cotler, who try to pressure liberal leadership into equating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism through legislation?
Well, I think that is a kind of a ploy or a scheme or an intentional misrepresentation, and that entire effort that is led by Erwin Cotler. You named him, right? He's a former MP and a former Minister of Justice. He has very, very deep, strong roots in Zionism. He's actually married to a woman who used to be like the general secretary of the Likud party, which is the party of Bibi Netanyahu. That's his wife. So Erwin Cotler, after the UN conference on racism in Durban, South Africa, when he saw Israel condemned as being racist, he thought of a strategy to protect Israel from further condemnation, which it deserves. And he came up with this strategy to use sympathy for the Holocaust to deem certain kinds of criticism of Israel as anti-Semitic. So they use the language of protecting Jews from anti-Semitism, and they use very righteous sympathy about the Holocaust, but they use it to deflect attention from Israel's crimes against the Palestinian people. And because they're very influential, they're able to move governments and large institutions like universities and police departments and even public libraries to adopt these standards. These standards are known by the initials IHRA, which stands for something that was just created for this purpose. It's the International Holocaust Remembrance Association or Alliance. And there have been battles over it in Canada in different legislatures, like in provincial legislatures and in city councils. And when we fight back, we usually defeat it. And when we don't fight back, it gets passed. And when we can defeat it democratically, often what they do is just through their influence, they can get it adopted. Like in Ontario, it was adopted by order in council. It was introduced in a bill in the Ontario legislature. It was Bill 168 about 2 years ago. The only Jewish MPP in Ontario opposed it. We opposed it. We mobilized a lot of opposition. Academics, labor people, of course, Palestinian organizations, our Jewish, independent Jewish voices, mobilized against it. The people supporting it, like Erwin Cotler and organizations that work with him, they saw it was going to be so controversial. So they had the bill withdrawn, and they had Doug Ford and his government just institute it by order in council, which means no discussion, no democratic process, just boom, institute it. Same thing happened in the Canadian government. They just put it right into a kind of anti-hate policy.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, it's not about hate. It's not about protecting the Jewish people in Canada from anti-Semitism. I don't think anti-Semitism in Canada is much of a problem at all. It's a very, very small problem. So none of this is about protecting Jews in Canada from anti-Semitism. It's all about protecting Israel from very justified criticism and they'll continue to push it.
Yeah.
I hope I answered your question.
Does your organization have any influential political representation in parliament?
Not yet.
Not yet. But you're working towards that?
I'm just gonna tell you something. I think I'm serious. All day today, I wore my Beisan Zubi t-shirt. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Beisan Zubi is a wonderful young Palestinian Canadian woman who bravely took the nomination for parliament. It was Kitchener Center for the NDP. And I'm like, yes, we're going to get her in parliament. Not yet. Let's just say not yet. We have very good people. My MP Matthew Green, Leah Gazan, Nikki Ashton. There's, I could give you a list. These are the first ones that come to mind. Alexander Bolderis. There are others.
I wanted to ask you also, if a law equating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism is passed, what consequences do you think it will have on freedom of speech?
Even if it's not passed, it's already having consequences, right? So there are people who apply for jobs, like professors in universities, who have written papers critical of Israel's human rights record on Palestine, who have been denied employment because of what they wrote in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You might know about Professor Azarov, who was offered a position.
Yes.
Again, I'm not good on details, but the University of Toronto Law School, directing the program in international human rights law. She is an internationally recognized human rights law professor. She was chosen over all the applicants for the job by the people, the selection committee offered her the job, and one Zionist guy called up the university. It's like, some of the donors might be uncomfortable if she's given that job. Ooh, well, she didn't get the job. So that is what the IHRA puts into official policy. So no longer is it just some disgusting influence from certain people to other people, but it becomes policy. So one of the tenets of the IHRA is if you single out Israel for criticism, that's anti-Semitic. So that's what I do. I don't spend my time defending the Tibetans, the Rohingya. I'm not trying to end the blockade on Cuba, right? I'm not you get my point?
Yes.
I single out Israel. That's what I do. That's my job as a Jewish person who's trying to be moral in this world. I single out Israel. That is what I have to do. So,
and your hands are full. There are too many things to do.
That's anti-Semitic. I want to say these things so people get it and hear it from me. Hear it from a rabbi who lived there.
Yeah.
If you deny the Jewish people's right to self-determination, that's anti-Semitic. It puts into Canadian law. I deny the Jewish people's right to self-determination on the graves of other people, on the rubble of their houses, torn down while they're living in it. The Jewish people have no right to self-determination on top of other people's homes that they drove out. There's no such thing as an abstract right to self-determination. How many ethnic, linguistic, religious groups in Canada don't use their right to self-determination? The Nishka, Haudenosaunee, the Haudenosaunee Nation sent a delegation to the League of Nations to be recognized as a nation so they could exercise their right to national self-determination as the Haudenosaunees. Who voted against it? Canada and the UK and the United States, right? So what is this right to self-determination? No, I deny that. So according to Erwin Kotler, I'm an anti-Semite. So they've, and then I'll tell you exactly. Well,
and that brings me to another question.
I just want to say there is real anti-Semitism, but that's not what this is about. This is not about that.
Yes. That brings me to this question. Is your condemnation of Israeli crimes against the Palestinian people, are you accused by fellow members of Jewish community of being a self-hating Jew? Such was the case with Noam Chomsky, Norman Finkelstein, Barbara Streisand, and other renowned Jewish influencers who stood up against Israel. How would you respond to these accusations and taunts?
Just don't bother.
So you've been accused?
Oh my God, yes. Oh, sure. You Google me. Actually, I want to say something. I'm speaking for myself, think there's a difference between demanding justice and freedom and equality for Palestinians along with everybody and anti-Zionism. I don't use the word anti-Zionist about myself. And I think it's right to acknowledge that there's a long historical relationship between the Jewish people and the land of Israel. I think that's our historic homeland. And I feel a part of that. I feel attached to it. In fact, I'm involved with Solidarity for Palestinians because of my relationship with the land of Israel. That's why I care about it. I don't have that relationship with anywhere else. I don't have that relationship with Canada. I'm grateful that I live here. Thank God. Thank God I live here. I literally thank God I live here. And I thank God I was born in America. But I don't have that relationship with the place where I was born, where my grandfather was born, in America. I have that relationship with the land of Israel. I can say with Jerusalem, with Hebron, right? That's I feel like that's where my roots are. But that doesn't give me any right to push out anyone else or hurt anyone else in any way. So I want to make a distinction just for me. You can use any words you want to use, but I want to be clear that I'm not an anti-Zionist. I'm anti-state, ethnic supremacy kind of a thing. That's what Zionism turned into. And that's a horrible tragedy. Mm-hmm. It may be a bad analogy, but you could be a communist and you could look at the Soviet Union and the Gulag and all the oppression and, Stalin killed so many people and Mao Zedong killed so many people, but you could still be a communist. Maybe a bad analogy. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say, that
I do, of course.
I'm not anti-Zionist. I just think Israel is it's become a criminal enterprise. And actually, it started out that way. Mm-hmm. Israel was born by expelling the people who lived there, right? That's horrible. Right. I can say that, and I can still think, wait a minute, I'm actually not an anti-Zionist. Okay, enough of that.
If I give you a couple of minutes to send a message to someone, who will you send it to, and what is your message going to be?
Well, honestly, I would send that message to my fellow Jews around the world, particularly living in Israel. And the message would be, honestly, I want to say, try to open your heart. Try to get over your fears. Your fears literally from centuries and centuries of powerlessness, victimization, Jews being oppressed. All that's true. But that doesn't have to be the way it is now. And I think so much of what we're doing is reinforcing a cycle of violence and injustice. And we can change that. We have partners. We have human people, normal people, just like us. And we can connect with them. We can live with them. We don't need to be afraid of them. And it's up to us to make that change. And I'm happy to have that conversation. That would be my message. Like, let's talk about that.
Yes. Well, we're running out of time. I would like to thank you again for coming with us tonight. We hope that all your work and efforts will be successful. And we hope that Palestinians will be granted the freedom and justice they deserve at the end of this struggle. I'd like to thank our viewers as well. And specifically, I would like to thank Maysoon Mansour for doing all the effort of translation, the conversation to Arabic. Thank you very much, Maysoon. Until we meet again in another episode, good night. شكرا لكم مشاهدينا الأعزاء على حسن المتابعة. إلى أن نلتقي في حلقة أخرى. تصبحون على خير. Thank you very much, David.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Good night.
Yeah, God bless you.